we're really very honored to be able to move to our next guest who is there in Gaza, and that is Afeef Nessouli, who is a humanitarian medical worker in Gaza. Afeef, thank you so much for being willing to join us here on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I want to make sure you guys can hear me and the electricity and the Wi-Fi is clear because it is, touch and go with this stuff here in Gaza.
Yes, as of right now, you are coming through crystal clear.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been pretty intense in the last 24 hours, but we kind of expect it to only get worse as the pressure campaign kind of increases and Netanyahu is building corridors. So yeah, I'm just happy to be kind of connected to you guys and reaching out and talking.
No, absolutely, and in a way, it speaks to maybe where I want to start because you've seen it from both sides. You've seen it from the side of a lot of us who are seeing the genocide live streamed on our phones, and now you are there, you're living, you're working through it, and I just wonder how does that reality on the ground compare to what we're seeing on our screens, and what are some of the things that have really struck you the most since actually arriving in Gaza?
I think we all intrinsically realize that like Gaza is so much more than like Israel's destruction of it and how much more Palestinians are than Israel's genociding of them. I think it's easy to tell online, but when you're here, it's extremely striking. Like some doctors have worked this entire year and a half without even getting paid. They're doing it out of pure commitment and pure sort of love for Palestine. So like witnessing the capacity in real time is incredible and intense and like humbling. Um, Healthcare workers can't even get food at hospitals because of the siege that's the blockade since early March. Local workers have been abducted. Like the the like sort of intimacy with these kinds of things is extremely new for me. Like the capacity of this type of person of Palestinians is downright humbling. I can't speak more. There's not enough to say. I would say that the reality is something that I wish I could imbue in all advocates because the stakes are so high and it kind of shifts your perspective and increases your ability to understand what is actually going on. So I hope that that answers your question.
Hmm.
Afeef, first of all, I hope that you're doing okay and you're safe. And I know it's like an incredibly dangerous place to be. So thank you for your bravery and going there and then speaking about what you're seeing. And I do want to ask you, because you're working as an EMT in Gaza under what I would imagine are unimaginable conditions given Israel's, systematic destruction of hospitals and clinics and the literal intentional targeting of doctors and nurses and medics, which we saw just in the last few days. So, I'm curious if you could maybe tell us what's the state of Gaza's medical capacity right now? What kind of care are you even able to provide?
So I'm supporting GLIA, which is a medical organization, as an EMT logistics coordinator, which means I'm basically witnessing that the entire healthcare system is being held together by Palestinian and humanitarian like willpower. There's got to be a lot of resourcefulness because there are no resources. There's got to be a lot of willpower because everything seems to be sort of we're fighting against all odds, it feels like, and with everything happening there, so much destruction of hospitals and clinics as we've all really witnessed. We're being for doctors, I don't want to speak as a doctor. I'm not a doctor and I'm not a nurse. I'm literally just supporting these people. Doctors and EMTs are being forced to make impossible decisions right now, and those include like who lives and who dies because there just isn't enough stuff here to save everyone. There's a person doing this while someone's suffering here, and there's not enough bodies in the room to make everyone survive, and people are dying in some ways from things that they might not die of in another situation. And it and it's insane because it's literally because of countries like the United States and Germany. They are just arming Israel seemingly unconditionally, and doctors wouldn't have to make these choices if they had resources. This blockade on humanitarian supplies is unconscionable, and witnessing it firsthand is, I can't explain it in any other way that it just feels so cruel and unbelievable. So, it's Gaza's healthcare system is destroyed. It's destroyed, and people are doing what they can with what they've got. But I think that it's important to say that this is part and parcel of a genocide. When you're here, you realize there's the deliberate strategy. You do realize it from abroad for sure, but I think when you see it, you realize like that actually they don't need to kill you directly. Like that isn't, they don't need to do that. They just need to get you close enough to death and get everyone sort of in chaos and in a frantic state that it's not just bombs and bullets. It's literally preventing life-saving aid from reaching them, the people in these hospitals. And you know, it's just really sad and hard, and it's also inspiring because with all of that, people are so incredibly thankful to God. They're so incredibly tender with one another. There is a hardness and a funniness that is just super relatable and even just sort of impressive, I have to say, about Palestinian people. So yeah, it's hard to witness that there is more to this than just bombing. It's actually a deliberate strategy that is causing havoc.
Mm. Well, it brings me to my next question, which I know is undoubtedly difficult to discuss. But what's a typical day like there? What kind of calls are you getting? Injuries are you seeing? What kinds of things are you confronting day in and day out there?
Yeah, so again, like I said, I want to make clear that I'm not a doctor and I'm not a nurse, and I'm supporting the staff doing logistics and documentation and coordination, which means I'm doing a bunch of different things because it's all hands on deck. I'm shadowing nurses doing their work and tracking down, making sure that they're documenting their cases so that we can really have, when things like this are going down in history, you need to be able to document them because there's a lot of, there's a lot of people who are going to spread propaganda about what's going on, and it's important to do the opposite of that and tell the truth. There's stuff like coordinating wheelchairs to kids who are missing limbs, and going into orphanages and soup kitchens and just figuring out who needs what and how, because you're getting connected to all these people through injuries of people. It's all very it's like a network that builds out, and there's not enough of your energy to do it all. So you're just doing whatever comes. One of my colleagues named Zahid Rahman, who's actually right now at the ER in, I believe, in Al Aqsa right now, tonight. He says that his days are chaotic and frantic, and that he sees a devastating amount of patients every day, from burns to gunshot wounds to shrapnel to just being in explosions. While doing that, we're hearing screams, we're hearing gunfire in the distance, we're hearing like drones. It's hard to hear now because it'll pick up in a couple of hours, but it's just a constant sort of buzzing of drones, and it's so stressful and anxiety inducing. And the capacity has absolutely collapsed. So you're just sort of doing all of these things with not enough resources while you're actively hearing murder. And I can't put it in any other way than that. You're just actively hearing violence.
I mean, that's what actively hearing murder. Jesus, the image you just painted is like insane and hard to fathom, and it kind of makes me think like if this was like World War II, it'd just be like going and doing logistics for medical aid in a death camp. And
Yeah.
that's what Gaza has been turned into. It's just so horrific. And, one of the most horrific things that's happened that we know about, I should say, in the last week is this one by one summary execution of these Palestinian Red Crescent medics. I'm just curious, how you, and I mean, especially those you're working with, you're saying you're working with like medics and nurses and talking to doctors. So all these emergency workers that you're working with at this moment, providing logistics for, how are they dealing with that? I mean, there has been a constant attack by the Israelis throughout this genocide on hospitals, on doctors, on nurses, but this particular execution of people and then throwing them into mass graves is just so unbelievably alarming. Is there fear among medics? I mean, how are you all navigating that reality?
I think that honestly, when you're in this kind of situation, I don't feel like you get to cope at all. I feel like that's what Palestinians have been telling me all year and a half. It's like there's not enough space and time. And I think the processing comes later because it's just you're moving really fast. You're just trying to detach and be dissociative a little bit to just give yourself a little bit of space to just do the thing in front of you instead of, really get just to get too into your feelings right now, which I think probably isn't really great because later they'll come. But before we crossed, UN like international and a UN international was killed, and there was a guest house that was bombed. So we kind of like came in knowing like shit was literally hitting the fan, and we would not be spared either. And not that there's any reason to believe that the Israelis are, targeting Hamas when kids are getting killed, but international people dying is also another smoking gun that like whatever they're saying is just propaganda. Um, I think it's just a matter of witnessing everyone having such a deep thankfulness to be capable and ready and willing to be here with a culture of people who are so deeply thankful and so deeply, um, I don't like to say any of the words that we all know and love, like resilient. They have capacity. They don't need to have this. They were not born wanting this capacity, but they are now forced into this capacity. And there is something that rubs off on you, and maybe it won't last forever. But I have not really witnessed fear. What I have witnessed is sadness and then strength on repeat, like a cycle. Sadness about what's going on because there's a lot of sad things, and then strength, and then the capacity to make jokes, the capacity to have joy just in the little things, like at the market, the capacity to haggle and be, intrinsically Arab and like just be who we are despite all of the shit going down. I think like honestly, all of the processing and fear of what's actually happening minute to minute will come, and when it will come, I will probably be very privileged because for some people that never comes. You never get the space.
Yeah.
You just get killed.
Mm.
Yeah.
I know that you've also spent time recently in Syria and Lebanon, where there's also this, significant expansion of Israeli, war in every type of way. And I guess this is maybe a tough question, but, what reflections are you taking from that? Like seeing, not only the genocide up close right there in Gaza, but having been in these other parts of the region that are experiencing this similar, expansionary wave here by Israel.
Yeah, I think what I've come to really realize is that I think Israel is like a corporation. It's like a business. It's like in the business of expansionism and urban development. And it uses Zionism as this like corporate catchphrase or like sort of corporate culture. And that is what you witness when you're in any of these countries. You're just like, okay, this group of this country, the state that is not defined by its religion and not defined by anything that is really about anything but business. Like it is a business entity trying to expand and make more money at the cost of Arab lives. And I think that is what I have gleaned, right? Like I have lost more and more willingness to see it any other way, whether it's in the South and I mean, Dera, I think, was hit today. There's been just stuff in Syria. I mean, there has obviously been a corridor created in the last few days here between, cutting Rafah off and cutting the north off. There have been bombs in Beirut this week. It's just like at some point you realize like this aggressor in the Middle East has destabilized the region. Like, but for Israel's existence, like all of like millions of people would have a lot more capacity and upward mobility and probably be a part of the world's economy in a different way. And I'm not saying that to say that there isn't some possibility in the future that something could go right and these people could be in harmony. I don't know. It doesn't seem like that's possible because it seems like, but for Israel's existence, all of these people around this country are being either genocided, bombed on a regular like daily level, or blockaded from just regular food. Those people are then blocked off from creating beautiful structures in the world that all of us could really benefit from. And so I think it's just important to realize like this is a strategy, it's deliberate, they're trying to expand, they're not going to stop. So there needs to be some other answer here. We have not done enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just to speak to what you're saying. I mean, obviously I'm not in Gaza, but I am in the States right now. And I just everything's so insane and it's the source of it right now. So much of it is coming from Israel. Like it's like I couldn't get through like an hour without Beirut got bombed. paramedics in Gaza were murdered. Syria's getting bombed. And then people here in the States are getting abducted by ICE for speaking out against the things I just mentioned. So it's like, it's just the source of so much atrocity. And it just seems endless. And, I know you've already spoken to this, Afeef, but I just want to give you an opportunity to have some last words on the fact that, despite everything, despite the apocalypse you've described, the bombardment, the starvation, the displacement, the expansionist aggression by Israel, which is now saying it's going to seize land in Gaza. People in Gaza are still trying to survive, still helping each other, still having moments of joy, still having a sense of humor. So I guess, just to leave our listeners and viewers with, what have you witnessed about the spirit and resilience of people in these conditions that the world should know?
Palestinian people are old souls. I mean, they're imbued with wisdom that we could never even, you know what I mean? Like, that is the first thing that you realize. They're strong enough to take care of each other in the worst of conditions. They're strong enough to literally try to have me over and feed me when they have no food. Like, they are literally on a regular basis. This is not one person, and this is not two people. This is several people all around, just being like, you are our family, come over, eat our ma'mul, come over, eat our meat. I'm like, no, are you kidding me? And they're funny, they're ribbing me, they're ribbing each other. There's always just constant comedy. I really hope that on my Instagram, I try to show these things because I think, we've done we already know what's going on. We already know there has been enough knowledge to say that no matter how much we're not doing enough. And I really hope that we can start, getting inspired by the idea that maybe we can do more to push past the envelope we thought we had, push past the thing that we thought we were capable of, and also to just share content about people not suffering in Gaza, because there is more than that here. I am experiencing more than just suffering here. I think that it's important that we know that they're suffering, but I do think we do know that. What I think we need to do is do more work about letting people live their lives as people that we can relate to and love and show up for.
Mm. Ooh, wow. Well, Afeef, I have to say we're just really, really honored that you were willing to give us some of your time amidst everything going on. Afeef Nessouli, thank you so much for joining us here on the Freedom Side.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.